Really excited to talk to him. It has been a while, and he's a man who knows a whole lot about some of the big names fighting this weekend. He is the former UFC heavyweight champion, the man who headlined UFC 100 way back in the day. Frank Mir joining us right now. Frank, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great to have you on. Great to talk to you. Okay, so there's a lot to talk to you about. Let's first start with your business. Where do you stand now as far as USADA and your fighting future is concerned? Can you give us an update on that?
Well, as of right now, USADA have the 2-year suspension starting in April. So 2018 of April, I guess I would be available to be able to fight again in the UFC. And even more, as troubling as that is, also they have it to where I can't do any broadcasting. Not that I was ever going to get in there, just because I've been asking for several years since the WC to be put into rotation. And now it looks like they still won't, now they have even more reason not to put me in the rotation. So right now, maybe possibly just being released by the UFC so I can go off and pursue my career in other avenues.
So are you going to try to appeal this, fight this? I know the B sample came back, and as you expected, it confirmed the A sample. And I thought that on your podcast, which we will talk about, Phone Booth Fighting, which you are representing very nicely on your T-shirt over there with Richard Hunter, I thought you brought up a great point. Would the same lab who said that the A sample was positive, would they kind of go against themselves and say that the B sample, so maybe we should be going to 2 labs? I thought that was a brilliant point. But I'm wondering if at this point, once the B sample came back, will you try to appeal this, or are you letting it go and you're going to take the 2-year suspension?
No, there's no really, I didn't see it as any advantage, or I didn't see really a course of action that would have been conclusive or really had any percentages on my side as far as being able to win. Basically, they came in and grabbed the supplements, and at first I was under the impression that they were going to test them, and then they notified me that no. Just kind of like on the long thought process that when they said that I could be present when the B sample was opened, in the same lab again in Tokyo, but it'd be my responsibility to get down there. And that's when I brought up again, like, well, why don't you guys send it to a lab here in the US? It's WADA approved. It's a little bit easier, more convenient for me to attend. It would, accomplish many goals. One, to be a different lab technician, different lab completely working on the sample, and B, a little bit easier for me to get to Salt Lake City or whatnot than it is for me to get to Tokyo.
Right.
And so even with the samples, they said, well, we collected them, but it's up to you if you want to test them. You have to foot the bill and you pay for it out of pocket. Same thing with getting an attorney to represent me. It started looking to be very expensive to fight, and at the end of it was, I'm still suspended and I'm not allowed to fight or broadcast. I have to think about my savings as something I'm going to have to sit back on, and I have children. So I made a calculated decision to go ahead and forego trying to battle it anymore. And basically now just the only option I really see is that even if it was a reduced sentence of 1 year, I have children and that are very active and in private school and different endeavors, and fighting and now kind of work whatsoever, even for a year, let alone 2 years, it's not feasible. So hopefully the UFC then just would, release me so I can go off and follow broadcasting and fighting in different avenues.
Have you asked them to release you yet?
Yeah, I already put it out there in motion when it first happened, and that after I realized about 3 weeks ago, the situation and its entirety, and looked at my savings account and what my kids cost to raise, I realized that I have to go make a living, and being tied up, not only not able to fight, but tied up, not able to do broadcasting or any kind of analytical work, which they weren't really letting me do anyway. Since 2011, I've been paying to get put back in the podcast. Rotation.
Okay, we lost you there for a second. I want to see if I get you back because I don't want to miss what you're saying. I don't know if we lost him, the connection, if we should call him. Maybe we should call him on his cell, because now it was crystal clear just a second ago, and now we lost him. Okay, we're going to call you, Frank, so if you don't mind sitting tight there. The connection was great. These things happen. Maybe there's a storm brewing through Las Vegas, but that is very interesting. I was not expecting to hear him say that, asking to be released so that he can go out, and that's the thing. I mean, that 2 years, especially if you didn't do anything knowingly, that is tough. Yoel Romero got really lucky at his age and doesn't have. I believe we have Frank now. Frank, are you there? Okay, we're gonna get him in a second. All right. So yeah, wow. Wasn't expecting to hear that, but certainly can sympathize as a father of two. I believe Frank has four. Frank, are you there?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, great. So sorry about that. Not sure what happened. You look great for a second, but I want to hear everything that you're saying. We lost the back end of your answer there. So you've asked the UFC, have they obliged? Are you released now?
No, as of right now, I'm told that they have to go back and look at their lawyers and figure out what course of action is permittable. And when that first was brought up to my attention, it made me think, okay, well, it's USADA, it has jurisdiction, basically, authority in this situation. And then when I'm paying attention to the news that Brock Lesnar is able to forego the 4-month testing pool that is a requirement through USADA for fighters coming out of retirement or anybody new to the organization that's required of them, that the UFC was able to make the call to forego that, give him exemption. So then that brought up questions in my mind going, well, okay, so the authority to actually carry out everything still resides with the UFC. Who are we waiting on to talk to? So, and honestly, I've been kind of patient. I realize that UFC 200 is a big card and they're very busy. They're fielding a lot of questions on whether or not they're selling the organization. So I think that there's a lot on their plate. And so I'm kind of trying to, as patiently as a person can be, just kind of wait to get my time in front of them to discuss the issue, which I feel is everybody, Lorenzo and Dana are both fathers and they understand the situation. As anybody would, that, I have kids, this isn't just affecting me. I have to, go forward and provide as a father before anything. And, without any avenue of which to do so, I need to look elsewhere.
You have 4 children, correct?
I do.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, hopefully they can sympathize with that. And why does this preclude you from doing any broadcasting work? Do you have any idea why?
No, I don't. Originally, I was just the assumption that I was supposed to do some analytical work when the news first broke that weekend on Fox. And so I understood at that moment saying, hey, this just happened. I would have understood if it had been that just, okay, this is new. We don't want you to be on air because we don't want this to be the, take, front center attention precedence over, the fights that are occurring this weekend. And so it made sense to me. But then basically the conversation was that, we have a standing, regulation from the producer that called me from Fox, Zachary Candido, and said that, we can't have you doing any on TV work. And so it seems like that's, carried over into all aspects. But again, I haven't got an opportunity to sit down in the room with Dana or with Lorenzo to really work out the details of what the consequences are and what they're going to try to run with. But that being said, it seems like even if I stayed with the UFC, getting on the desk to do any kind of, or the cage side to do any kind of color commentating, it hasn't come to fruition. I've been asking for years to be put in the rotation, with Kenny and those guys that are doing a great job. But I also want to be able to get in there, and it seems like the door's been shut to me. So maybe this is the silver lining of the situation, is maybe the door will be opened up in another organization where I can also color commentate.
And for whatever it's worth, I thought you were fantastic when doing the WC work on Versus, and would love to see you do more of that. Not so much the studio stuff, which you're great at, but I thought that takes a special kind of talent to do the color stuff, actually calling the fights. So hopefully that is a silver lining. There was once a rumor, I never asked you about this, once a rumor that before the second Brock fight, you lost that job because you said that, you typical trash talk, you wanted to kill him, all that stuff. Is that true? Did you really lose the job because of that trash talk? Because I've heard a lot worse since then.
Yeah, at first what it was is I wasn't allowed to commentate they were like, hey, you know what, that was very controversial. It made headlines in a negative way, what you said, and obviously I replied back saying, well, I was just trying to sell the fight like everybody else tries to sell fights, and my argument was, I've seen you guys actually on your releases and network and broadcasting put fighters up, and your show opening was, I'm out for blood, and I'm not joking. So what's the difference of what they said and what I said? We're all just trying to, obviously everybody knows you're not really trying to kill the guy, but we use those euphemisms in our our conversation, our vocabulary. And so, but at the end, I was like, I recognize that it's an issue. I'll stand down for a little bit. And then I really didn't get an opportunity to jump back in there, because then that's when they consolidated the UFC and the WEC just absorbed it. And so that eliminated it. So then I was told that, no problem. In fact, when the UFC first bought Strikeforce, I had a conversation with Dana that I would be able to get in there and start doing color commentating. But then they absorbed that before I had the opportunity. So as far as I know, they've been very much in the positive about me getting there. But now I'm starting to think, I'm like, all right, it's been a couple years now, guys. I keep getting told that I'm going to get in there, and it's not happening. At a certain point, it's one of those things like, hey, thanks for your time, but maybe I need to go somewhere else to get the opportunity. It'd be, you're the second string quarterback, and they're telling you you're going to get playing time. It's 8 seasons later, and you're like, maybe I need to get traded so I can get some playing time.
You've been a great ambassador to in many degrees. You've been a face for the UFC. You headlined the biggest show up until this point against Brock as champion. Were you hoping to get one of those, ambassador jobs that we've seen Chuck, Matt Hughes, Big Nog get? Do you think that's even possible, or is that out of the window now because of this USADA thing?
I don't know. Once again, I'm kind of limited on answers. I have as many questions as everybody else does as far as what situation this would put me in. I mean, for example, when it first occurred, then I assumed that, I was voted into the Southern Nevada Hall of Fame of sports. And so at first I called up family members, and everybody canceled their travel arrangements, because the assumption would be that, well, I'm obviously not going there now. And, about a month later, I got a phone call, not even addressing the issue, but just like, all right, so we need this, this, and this from you. It was kind of like, the elephant in the room wasn't addressed. And so it was odd, but I went ahead and just kind of went along with it. Like, all right, assuming that at the UFC's, I'm the only fighter ever in MMA or the UFC to say that, to make it into the Southern Nevada Hall of Fame. And so I assumed that would be an opportunity for me to meet, see the guys and have a run-in. And no one was there. Mark Radner opened up for somebody else, so he was present. But no one else really showed up for the UFC. So I'm really not getting the opportunity to get in front of somebody face-to-face to ask questions.
Initially, you said that you thought it was maybe tainted kangaroo meat. Do you still think that?
I have no idea. That was it was an option just because I thought about it, because trying to, I'm banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how this could happen. And, obviously then, people are giving me different, ideas like, hey, have you looked this route? Have you looked up into the, what rock have you not turned over? And then that was when the clenbuterol was becoming an issue in Mexico because of meat that comes from China. They were using procedures they shouldn't have to grow the meat bigger and stronger. And then someone sent me an article where it said, well, hey, they used the drug that you've been busted with, that, supposedly the metabolite, that you do have the metabolite that could derive from this drug is in your system. Farmers that want to make extra meat, it's not legal to do, but they do this in Australia, and China has also been found to do this. This is, why they had the problem with the clenbuterol. So it's kind of the same alley. So I was like, well, a possibility, but the facts I do know is that they randomly drug tested me 6 weeks before the fight, blood and urine, knocked at my door at 6:30 in the morning. And I passed the random drug test flying colors. But then the drug test that I knew that I was going to come, that's the one that's metabolite. And they're like, well, it's because you could have stopped taking this supplement. The fact that it's in low levels in your blood means that you stopped taking it probably 5 or 6 weeks before the fight. So I attempted to take a drug to enhance my athletic ability for a day or two, and hoping that it would eliminate from my system, because on the internet you can read it, that it stays in there sometimes up to 6 weeks. What benefit would that have gained me? I mean, let's just look at the facts. I took a drug for 2 days. Like, I'm not the most unintelligent person in the world, and anybody with half of a brain cell can look up and go, well, steroids don't really work that way. You can't just take them for 2 days and get off of them and expect to see any benefit whatsoever. So I opened myself up to great risk with no reward,
right,
knowing that no matter what, when I showed up in Australia, win or lose, I get paid the same. So there was no financial incentive. Obviously, it didn't make me look any differently, so there was no visual ego involved trying to change my physique. I'm like, guys, it just doesn't add up. To me, it makes more practical that somehow I came across this metabolite in a way that I was not aware of, and I need help to try to figure out where it came from. If you're asking me questions, I'm not a chemist.
And so to be very clear right now, you have no idea why this came up, right? You don't have
No.
Wow, that has got to be.
No, in fact, that's why I've actually been on the phone a lot. There's a baseball player over the Blue Jays, Chris Cosabello.
Yeah, Colabello, yep.
He and several other baseball players have also in the last couple months. In fact, Chris, I was on the phone with him. He goes, I showed up at the training camp and we knew he goes, it wasn't a random drug test. I even showed up 5 days early for it. Do you think someone shows up 5 days early thinking that they have to eliminate something from their system? And so again, somebody that we can't figure out why this one particular metabolite seems to come up. He's trying to, he has a little bit more money than I do. So I'm kind of sitting back on that, trying to see what they're able to come forth with. One of the guys, even that baseball players, they got busted with this metabolite in the system. When they came to retest him again months later, same thing. And the other thing that's weird is all of us have just low levels. That's the part that's kind of odd, is that all of us are on the same cycle at the same exact time when we get tested. Like, what are the chances of that? That's another thing that just draws my curiosity to, something just doesn't add up. And that's happened before. I mean, obviously a lab is not 100%. We've made mistakes in the past with, I was researching articles where people were losing their children because they would take a test and metabolites for methamphetamine were coming up. And then, people were screaming up and down that I'm not on meth. What are you talking about? They come to find out there's other drugs that, or supplements or medicines would give a false positive. But it took years for the science of the test to become refined enough to realize that, we have that word for a reason. A false positive occurs through some other foreign substance that, initially the lab was not aware of until trial and error.
The Colabello thing is fascinating to me. I'm actually a big Blue Jays fan, so I know his story very well. Did you reach out to him, or did he reach out to you? How did that work out?
Oh, a mutual acquaintance was able to put us together. He actually listened to my podcast.
Wow.
Where I discussed the situation, and he, out of his own mouth, said it gave him chills because it's exactly how he felt.
Wow.
Where he's being told that you took this metabolite is in your body and you have no clue. And, and I'm not an unintelligent person when it comes to the idea that if you are going to take a drug and you're going, I've seen people in the past, if you go ahead and just kind of expose yourself and sit there and go, yes, I did it, I was injured, I had to make it to make, the team or whatever the case may be, there's a conclusion to it. Our society seems to get past it. If you look at the people that consistently deny against evidence, we hold on to it a lot more. I mean, you look at Jason Giambi, right?
Yeah.
He came forward and said, yes. He's never really brought up in the conversation. Now you have Barry Bonds, who's on all these lists, and all these people are pointing the finger at, vehemently denies it, and guess what? He's still the poster boy for, drug abuse in the Major League Baseball. So even there, I'm looking at it going, well, I guess I could just lie and say I did it to get over it, but my own sense of honor going, but I didn't.
Right.
That bugs me. I just can't, if I got, convicted of a crime, or, being prosecuted of a crime that I didn't do, and they're like, well, if we take you to court, you might do life in prison, but I didn't do it. But if you just cop that you did do it, we'll just give you parole. I'm going to have to go to court, guys. I can't be known as this guy that did this when I didn't.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you for not wanting to say that. That sticks with you forever. So here's what I'm really curious to hear about. What are your feelings 5 days before 200? If this doesn't happen, even if the Hunt fight goes the same way, I feel like there's a great chance that you're fighting Brock Lesnar at UFC 200. Do you agree with that? And is it going to be hard are you just not going to watch? Because you're the fight, you're the guy. I mean, that's the rivalry that everyone wanted to see play out. You were in talks. There were some rumors that he was coming back a couple of years ago and it was going to be you. What are your thoughts now that you see him back 5 days away from fighting in your hometown?
Oh, it's a missed opportunity. And I think anybody that has a regret in life to look back at, and even if you're not at fault for it, where it's like, well, it really nothing I could have done about it. I think we still have those regrets in life where you look at it going, man, I missed that. A second too late, or a day later, $1 short, and whatever, using you want to use. And you can dwell upon it. I'm not going to lie and say that, does it bother me? Oh, greatly so. I wish that was me out there. I wish I was the one walking in there with Brock on Saturday. But I'm not. And so now, instead of sitting there and dwelling upon it, which I've done since the months after the fight, I've tried to just now focus on just what I can do. Sitting down with Richard Hunter and working on our podcast together to get my voice out there to try to make a case for getting also back into broadcasting and analytical type of work, being relevant still in the world of MMA in any capacity that I can still, perform. So I try to just look at the positives of what I can control. Does it bother me? Yeah, man, it bugs the hell out of me.
At 37 and with a family of 4, do you still want to fight, or would you rather try to find TV work that means you don't have to fight? Like, do you still have that fire in you to compete anymore, or would you rather not?
No, I do. But it's very much just like, I mean, you being a father of 2 can understand. Obviously, when you're younger and it's all about you, you follow your ambitions. And I was very happy that, getting paid was like, well, that's great. Here, money. My wife can take it so that way when I'm at the gym all day, she can't, be upset,
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, do I love to fight and want to get out there and compete still? Absolutely. But then I also look at, well, I have the responsibility of my children. So if I'm not making money at fighting, pursuing that, I have to go ahead and look at other avenues and go out there. But if I can still go out there and fight, and that still provides my children with a life, that's a perfect scenario for me. If I have to go out there and do other things, work more in broadcasting, and which I really like, I do enjoy. So it's not like it's a horrible alternative by any stretch of the imagination, but you do it, and that's just the case of being a father. And first and foremost, I have to provide for them, and that's what really has put me in such a vice when it comes to what's the current situation.
Have you been able to, I don't even know if you're allowed to, but put out feelers to other organizations, other networks, whether or not they'd be interested in hiring you? Like, do you have a sense of, okay, there's something, and you don't have to say, of course, I don't want you to ruin a deal, but there's something waiting for me if I could just get past this hurdle, get my release from the UFC, walk away amicably. There's nothing for me there. Are you familiar with anything like that out there?
Well, I mean, obviously you're not really allowed to discuss with
Sure.
other people contracts where you're under contract.
Okay.
I feel extremely comfortable that if the UFC were to release me, that I'll be able to work in other organizations and fight and do broadcasting.
Okay. Wow. Well, and so you started this podcast with Richard Hunter, who's a MMA media member. I see him at all the events. It's called Phone Booth Fighting. You can get it on iTunes, every other place where you can get a podcast like this one. And of course, you started it before this whole thing came up. Why did you start? And now it's helped you to get to, it's a great platform for you to have to be able to tell your story. You used it in a very smart fashion. Of course, like me, I wanted the scoop, but hey, I got 100% that you would go on your own show and use that platform where you can talk freely. Why did you initially start it though? Why did you want to do something like this?
Well, I like the idea of just kind of being unedited and be able to say and speak my mind and discuss things. And also, a lot of times when you are the interviewee, I go on your show, you already have formatted questions to ask me. But then, and that allows me to discuss who I am to people. But there's times I want to discuss topics that aren't relevant to who I am. I'm just now basically sitting in the seat of a journalist, just as an outsider viewing something. And I like to break it down and think about it and talk about it and discuss it. And so this is really what gave me that avenue to sit down there and be like, okay, well, hey, guess what happened over in Baghdad recently? And we talk about, our thoughts on, whether the Sunnis and the Shiites, and, we could talk down and break down fights, that not necessarily that I'm the guy fighting somebody, other individuals, and breaking down what I think the strengths and weaknesses are. And I very much enjoy that. That's something that it's funny. Richard and I said that we sit down and, I'll drink a beer, he doesn't, and hang out and shoot the breeze, and we just try to solve the problems of the world. And that's when it was like, hey, why don't we just broadcast this and other people can get in? And I thought as an avenue to also stir other people's conversations. I'm like, whether it's, taken positively or negatively, people can give me their input, and now I can reach a broader range of people besides just whoever's within the sound of my voice. And I like discussing things. I like, hey, so what do you think about this? And an exchange of ideas and beliefs, and just well, I think this and this is why. I'm like, all right, well, I think this and this is why. And the going back and forth of information is something that is one of my favorite pastimes. And now with podcasting, I can broadcast it out, and people can listen, and that's why actually I'm super excited about tomorrow night. At 10:30, we'll be at the Stratosphere with Adam Hunter doing a stand-up. We're going to sit down with Gorgeous George and Goes and basically have an open forum where, Dan Hardy's going to be our guest, and, fans can come up to the mic and back and forth ask questions and just start conversations, and just, have a good talk.
So that's another thing to look forward to. That's tomorrow if you're in Las Vegas, 10:30 p.m., the LA Comedy Club inside the Stratosphere on the Las Vegas Strip. It's a free show. You don't have to pay to get in?
No, it's free. Just
Wow.
come down and hang out. And yeah, right now, as far as raising money for the podcast, we do want to go ahead and up it up as far as the mechanics behind it, which I'm not very good at. If Richard Hunter disappears, I don't know how to download any of the information.
Sure.
But our mics and some of our, we're getting requested. Some of our equipment's really not that top notch. So we started a Fund Anything campaign, and if people want to check that out on our website, they can look at it and see what they can contribute and what benefits they'll receive from it to help out, and so that way we can turn around and actually raise the quality of the show. Traveling is something that I look forward to, as far as getting out to different venues to meet other fans in person and have discussions.
That website is fundanything.com/phoneboothfighting. Your website is phoneboothfighting.com. The show is now twice weekly, so 2 times a week, every Tuesday and Friday. That's when new shows are posted. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, all those places. Your Facebook, Instagram page, Phone Booth Fighting, Twitter and Snapchat, also Phone Booth Fight. So those are some of the places where you can learn more about Frank's show. So let me put you on the spot here. Mark Hunt, Brock Lesnar. Let's put that analyst cap on. Who wins and why?
I think that you have to favor Mark Hunt because Brock has a great double. He's very powerful, can explode through, but he's a little bit older than he was last time we saw him. He's closing in on 40, and anybody you talk about that's had a 5-year absence from the octagon. If we were talking about Anderson Silva, one of the greatest martial artists that ever come into the UFC, and you said, okay, he's coming off of a 5-year layoff, questions would arise about his timing, the ring rust, and everything else. And I think people are forgetting about that with Brock. It's like, hey, guys, he hasn't fought for 5 years, and the guy he's fighting has a low center of gravity. He's a thick guy. He's not a small heavyweight. He cuts down to make 265. He's not the easiest guy just to run through with a double. You're going to have to exchange with him a little bit like, Stipe did, to try to throw him off, to grab onto a leg and maybe get him down. And he's also very good at getting up. And that whole time you're trying to do that, Mark Hunt, out of all the heavyweights I've ever fought, hits the hardest. Without even a hesitation, I can answer it. And I've been with Roy and Junior and Alistair, and no one hits harder than Mark Hunt does. I think he has now the record for most first-round knockouts, so I don't think I'm the only one to probably think this. And so Brock's going to have to try to get past that, with his jab and his straight right hand, which are probably his 2 best weapons offensively on his feet. Is he going to be able to do enough to get past the striking of Hunt to secure a takedown and get down and hopefully take him down and wear him out until he can, maybe secure a submission or get a TKO. I just feel that even though it's possible, it's not like it's impossible. I wouldn't be blown away if Brock pulled it off. But I think just probability-wise, looking at it on paper, it's like, well, Hunt has a lot of advantages. He's been competing a lot, and really, even though he's older and he's 42, he's actually improved over the last couple of years when it comes to the world of MMA.
Yeah, it's clear that Brock wanted to come back, but are you surprised that he took this fight? The knock on him has always been that he doesn't like to get punched, and now he's fighting the guy who you say you know better than anyone, punches harder than anyone in the division. Was this a mistake that he chose Hunt? Because you'd have to think that he had the pick of the litter. I mean, as far as Hunt, are you surprised?
Not really, because I feel that it's a situation to where it's kind of like, I think it's the kind of mental agreement that Conor made in his fight, right? When he was fighting Nate Diaz, everybody's like, oh, well, he's not very good on the ground. I'm like, yeah, but did you notice that he actually got punched in his face and he was stunned and decided, he made a deal with himself that it's probably better to get choked out than it is to get knocked out. So he changed levels, shot on Nate, and decided, that would be a better way to lose the fight than to get knocked out. So I think guys sometimes look at the more honorable way to go out if they are going to lose. So I've always done that myself. That's why I've always chosen the toughest guys to fight. If I had an opportunity, like fight fighter A or fighter B, I'm like, well, fighter A is way more dangerous. Let's choose him. And one, the reward for beating him is so much better. But if Brock goes out there and gets knocked out by Mark Hunt, he's just one other guy that got knocked out by Mark Hunt. It's not,
Sure.
You sit there and go, well, I came off a 5-year layoff. It is Mark Hunt. He's known to knock people out really fast, and, he hits super hard. There's not as much lost. And if he gets a win, it's great. Mark's been on the rise. He's doing well. He's a very popular fighter. People like him. So there's a lot to gain. Now, if Brock came back and you put him in there with somebody that everybody goes, who? Huh? He goes out there and fights somebody like Jake, that maybe not as more well-known, decent wrestler out of Oklahoma, but he goes and knocks him out. It looks really bad.
Okay.
So I think that it was actually a smart decision to pick somebody that's a lot of upside, and the downside, no one's going to really knock him as much unless, if he lost to somebody of lower caliber. If he fought some guy that wasn't even in the top 15, still a chance he gets knocked out, and now it looks really bad.
I know we're running out of time, but I just got to ask Jones DC, because you know them very well. You used to be a part of Jackson's. You fought Daniel Cormier. Who's your pick in that one?
Oh, I have John.
Okay.
I think that DC still has too much reach disadvantage. John has a great reach advantage. And we saw in their first fight that the wrestling that DC has wasn't enough to overcome the wrestling that John has. I mean, Daniel's probably still maybe the better pure wrestler just by looking at their accomplishments on paper, but it didn't really equate to the ring. In fact, John's the one who took him down. And so, and it wasn't that Daniel wasn't working on his wrestling. It wasn't like he set it to the side. He had a high-level Olympic athlete, in there working with him. So how much better could have Daniel improved his wrestling since then? None. His wrestling's already as high level as it's ever going to be, and it still fell short. Whereas the attributes that John is able to beat him at, Daniel's not able to make up for. And even in the first fight, when you said who do you think's going to win, I'm like, that's a long jab to get past. And then when you do get past it, John's good at wrestling. And I think that's pretty much the most simplified version of putting this fight. It's not easy to get in on John, and when you do, he's really good at wrestling himself, and he has a tall, long body that I think the angles threw Daniel off, trying to go for the crotch lift, on the head outside single, and, he first tried to run the pipe. John has great balance. When he tried to lift him, all of a sudden John's toes are still on the ground because he has such a high center of gravity. And so I still feel that, Daniel's a phenomenal fighter. I just think that, he's probably the second best guy in the world at 205, and John happens to be the number one guy.
Yeah. Okay. Tremendous stuff, Frank. Really appreciate the time and candor. Last question for you is this. If you get your release, if you get what you want, if you move on to somewhere else and do TV work and fight, when you're 50, 60 years old, are you at peace with how this all turned out? Of course, you didn't want it to turn out this way, but for your UFC career run to end like this, can you be at peace with that? Can you be okay with that? Or are you afraid that it's going to bother you until you're old and gray?
Oh, it absolutely will bother me. I don't want to lie and be like, I'll get past it. It'll be one of those things that I'll be very sad about, the fact that I've spent 15 years of my life, being in the UFC, and this is how it ended. It's not a happy note to end on. And then it'd be one of those things I'm going to have to chalk up as a regret that I'll have until the day they put me in the ground. And I just have to move on and try to continue with other aspects of my life.
I wish you the best, Frank. I really do. I hope it all works out for you. Great work with the podcast. Phoneboothfighting.com is where you can learn more about it. If you're in Las Vegas, go check out his show tomorrow, 10:30 at the Stratosphere, as we talked about earlier. You could talk to Frank Mir, Dan Hardy, and all those other great names. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Great to hear your insight. And I do wish you and your family the very best, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, there he is, Frank Mir, the former UFC heavyweight champion. Wow, did not expect him to say that. Really just wanted him on to talk about his podcast, talk about the fight. He knows Mark Hunt, fought him in his last fight. He knows Brock Lesnar, fought him twice. Didn't expect the release bombshell, but hard not to sympathize with him, I should say. Father of four, you got to make money. You don't want it to end this way, but what are you going to do? You can't broadcast, you can't fight. He is an MMA fighter. What's he going to do? Man, tough. All right, that does it. No more interviews. Nurkic, any parting words, any final thoughts before we embark on this insanity that is the 2016 International Fight Week?
I wish you good luck, sir.
Yes, I wish you good luck. What is this game called, by the way? Is it called the Double Down? Apropos, because wasn't it the KFC Double Down that really stole Mark Hunt's heart? It
was called the Double Down.
There we go. So it's the Double Down. It's the MMA.
Chicken as bread.
Chicken,
with some
2 pieces of chicken, and then like
bacon in the middle.
Yeah, and cheese. That's the thing. That's the one that got away from him.
The Double Down.
KFC.
Oh, and congratulations to your Warriors on acquiring Kevin Durant as well.
Knicks just signed Willie Hernan Gomez and also some guy from Lithuania. I mean, the signings.
Listening to you and Mike gush about the Knicks.
Mike, who also works for SB Nation.
It was so cute. Cute.
Yeah. What have you guys done, by the way? Anything? Have you signed a person or just lost players?
When Dwayne Wade comes calling.
Yeah, right. By the way, I would be down with that. Screw the Heat.
Well, I just think it's like somebody has to compete with the
super team, the super friends.
Yeah, with the Warriors.
By the way,
as constructed, the Cavs are not beating the Warriors.
What about all these NBA insiders who are like, just give the title? Have we not learned from history? Lakers tried to do it, didn't work. Heat in their first year didn't work. I mean, more often than not, when you construct these super teams, and I know this one's different because they're all young in their prime. All of them play together except for Durant. He's a nice fit there. I get it, but can we stop with the crowning a champion in July nonsense?
What's also in the NBA, you're one injury away from being at the bottom.
By the way, they just signed David West. Crazy is that?
On a veteran minimum.
Zaza Pachulia too.
Ring chaser. They're going to sign Patrick Ewing, and he's finally going to get his.
Stop it. Why do you have to? Okay, Melo, Porzingis, Rose, Noah. I mean, that's the super team I'm excited about.
The strongest 7th seed I've ever seen.
Okay, good night. Final thought, and you can hear my music. Here's what I'll say about this week in Las Vegas. Here's what I'll say about what we're about to embark on. In a week's time, actually in 6 days' time, because we're back next Monday, by the way. We'll take it all in. We'll recap it. We'll enjoy it. We'll talk about the ups and downs. Here's what I'll say. Freaking enjoy this. This is a pretty special thing. You're getting 3 straight nights, something like 21 hours, 30-something fights, featuring the very best athletes at what they do, all in the span of 3 days. And I'm not gonna lie, some of the things that have happened in this sport over the last month and beyond at times have soured me on this sport. This comes at a great time. It comes at a great time for not just me, but I think for all of us. Let's just enjoy this. Let's worry about the other stuff later. Let's worry about the consequences. Let's worry about the politics. Let's worry about the money, all that stuff that we love to talk about. And just enjoy this amazing stretch. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to covering it. I'm looking forward to being there with all the fans, the journalists, the fighters, everyone, taking it all in, and really remembering why we love this sport so much. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for everything. I love all of you. Thank you very much to Bruce Buffer for stopping by. Good luck to him. Thank you very much to Joseph Duffy. Good luck to him on Thursday. Thank you very much to Valerie Letourneau. Best of luck to her. Thank you very much to Mike Goldberg. Best of luck to him. Thank you very much to Yo Romero. And all the best to the great Frank Mir. Thank you to him for stopping by. Back next Monday, same time and place. Enjoy the fights. Until I say peace.